Thank you, Chairman. And I, too, want to add that I hope that with the FAA reauthorization on the floor, that we will get the Airport Security Enhancement and Oversight Act perhaps added to that, because I think it makes a lot of sense to do that in light of some of the concerns that we have in this committee and the broad support in this committee for that bill. But I wanted to follow up on this issue as well, on the angle of, we know that one of the things that came to light that was of deep concern as we thought about the airport workforce was that there were 73 individuals that the Inspector General had identified with reported some ties to terrorism or issues of concern. And as a result of that, we learned that, in fact, TSA was not getting access to the real-time information from the terrorist identities data mart, environmental, or tied data to help inform your vetting of these employees that were having access to the airport. And so I wanted to get an update on where we are in terms of you getting access to the information that you need, not only as Senator Nelson has identified the materials that are being brought to make sure people are inspected, but what information you have access to that you know about these individuals who have access at the airport that your average person doesn't have, obviously.
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. As I noted earlier, this committee was very supportive in asking for that access, and I'm pleased to report that we now have access to all of the categories that we need to ensure that we're vetting people continuously against those tied categories, and that's allowed us to more effectively screen the credentialed population on a daily basis.
And so that's going smoothly, and
it is, yes, ma'am. It is.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to ask about a bill that Congress passed in December of 2014. I also serve on the Homeland Security Committee, and this bill was one that I supported, the Transportation Security Acquisition Reform Act. This is legislation that required TSA to implement best practices and improve transparency with regard to technology acquisition programs, because there have been a number of difficulties, challenges, and failed programs that haven't come to fruition that prompted Congress to pass this bill. And so I wanted to get an update on where you were in terms of greater accountability on TSA's acquisition practices as well today.
Well, that's a particular interest of mine as well. So when I came in, and I had dealt with acquisition reform in the Coast Guard before coming to TSA, and so I wanted to pay particular attention to the way in which we conducted acquisition. So one of the first things I did when I came on board last July was to ask the Defense Acquisition University to come in and do a top-to-bottom review of our acquisition programs and the way in which we conduct them, to look particularly for any gaps or process improvements that we could make. They've just provided that report to me. It took them about 4.5 months or so to do that. I'm very pleased with that report. We're now comparing those requirements against the requirements of the Acquisition Reform Act, and we're making process improvements as we go. What I'd like to do is, I've got a report that we're compiling now for the committee that will show the steps that we can take, I think, that will dramatically improve our accountability, our oversight, as well as the ability to actually field capability when we need it.
Right. I mean, obviously, that's the key, because a lot of the work before wasn't fielding capability. And then
and that's my big concern.
And of spending dollars with no result. And so I would love for us to receive that report so that we can understand where we stand with it and what further action that we can support you on to really improve the acquisition process, because that's critical as you think about your mission and making sure that we have everything functioning with our security system. I also wanted to just ask about the managed inclusion issue. As I understand it, and I'm pleased that this has happened, that you've discontinued managed inclusion 2.
Yes, I have.
Which is, I think, very smart and logical in light of the purpose of your agency and security concerns. And I just wanted to follow up the app that was being used that certainly came under some criticism was an app that I understand This app essentially was some reports that it was $1.4 million for using this. I'm assuming you don't need this app anymore now that you've discontinued the Managed Inclusion 2.
Yeah, we are not using that app.
Okay.
So,
Was that one of those ones, which would be an example where maybe we shouldn't have purchased that? Seemed like
Well,
a waste of dollars to me.
so I've looked at that, and it really, it wasn't, there was a lot more involved in that contract. It was apparently an IBM contract from 2013, and that covered, that 1.4 million apparently covered quite a few components or things. And so the actual app was significantly less cost than that, somewhere in the thousands. Nonetheless.
We didn't need it.
Nonetheless, it is not an app we're using anymore.
Right.
And what I will tell you is that I have great concern over the way in which we are spending our contracting dollars, the way in which we're spending our acquisition money. It's why I did a complete review of the acquisition program. I think we can build more controls and more process improvements into it so that I can get capability out there that is at the lowest cost to the taxpayer, but actually produces things that we really need.
Well, good. I appreciate your focus on this, because to me, this is critical as we think about the things we do need to do at our airports that require resources, and so not to waste resources on things we don't need. So I
couldn't agree
appreciate
more.
it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.